And, I always say there's lots of pathways to the top of the mountain, and it doesn't really matter which pathway we take so long as we get to the top, that being the healing of the person that we're working with. And, it's funny because I feel like a lot of people out there really get so adamantly anti-astrology when they find out that it's a tool that I work with. I would say a majority of people seem pretty open to it and like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't even know that could be done. And then sometimes there's this vehement backlash of like, astrology is not real. And one of the big things is that and this is what I hear a lot, is that there's no scientific proof that astrology is real, that astrology actually works, that there's any way that a planet way out there in the solar system could affect us down here on Earth, that there is no proof, that there is no scientific validation that astrology is real, and that that its even existence is even valid. So I want to talk about that today because people bring it up to me more often than I prefer, honestly. But I think it's important to talk about because my response to this is, well, first of all, what do you mean by proof? Like, what does proof mean? I think that's an important thing to consider. And I think an even bigger part of that, on almost like maybe more of a philosophical level, like what exactly do you mean by truth? Like that astrology is not true, it's not real. Well, what is real? What is reality? What is truth? What constitutes truth? And what constitutes proof? I think these are important questions to ask because it gets into, I think important questions in terms of how do we get clear on the words that we're saying? How do we understand and perceive really what reality is? What is truth? What is not truth? What is the role of science? What is the function of science? What is it supposed to be doing? And I think when it comes to the topic of truth, I think there's an important distinction that I'd like to make in regards to this discussion of astrological medicine. And the first is this differentiation between scientific proof versus pragmatic truth. Okay, and that's what I want to talk about today. And I think this is kind of where I stand on it. I know different people have different minds and different approaches and different ways of thinking about things, and that's great and that's fine. But I think differentiating a scientific truth from a pragmatic truth is an important distinction here, because while there may not be necessarily scientific proof that astrology works or that there's any validity to it, there is whole stacks of pragmatic truths and proof from thousands and thousands and thousands of people across spans of hundreds of years and thousands of years across the world. So scientific truth. What constitutes scientific truth? Well, that's really difficult to define in a lot of ways, and it's going to depend on who you talk to. But I would say, generally speaking, it is one where there is, what is science, right? What is the science? Science is a method, okay? It is a methodology. It is approach to trying to determine something about the reality in which we live. And it typically begins as a question, right? A question, a hypothesis that then is thoroughly researched and tested and analyzed from multiple angles and multiple perspectives and by different people, and generally shown to be accurate. Like there comes to a point where there is a consensus where something has been looked at through multiple perspectives to be deemed either true or not true. And I think there's some problems with this. First of all, I think one of the biggest problems is that a lot of people get into the realm of science that really aren't scientists, or they don't actually have a very scientific mind. They don't apply the scientific method accordingly to the way it was designed to be applied. And what I mean by that is that there's a lot of people that get into the scientific area of whatever it is, specific form of science that they're into, but people doing like more research science, is that they can go into it with a predisposition, I suppose, to what it is they want to figure out or what it is that they want to find. Like there's a lot of politics in science, and people, want to get published, or they want to get this, they want their thesis to be accepted, or they want to, whatever it is. There's oftentimes an underlying motivation that can be present in scientific research that skews it a little bit. I also think the biggest problem is that it's always changing. Things that were deemed to be true or not true 100 years ago may now have been proven to be wrong or correct. Things that are deemed to be true or untrue today will likely be proven otherwise in the future as science discovers more. It's like kind of an innocent until proven guilty kind of mindset, right? It's like sometimes it's seen as true until proven false. And I think it really, for some reason with astrology, it's false until proven true. I think both approaches can be taken by people in different situations. But I think the fact of the matter is that our understanding and knowledge of things is constantly growing. And just the fact that science at this juncture of time has not found a rational explanation for how planetary bodies in our solar system could influence and affect human beings on Earth doesn't mean that it doesn't exist or doesn't actually occur. It just means that they haven't figured out how to figure that out yet, right? I think there's a lot of other factors that come into play here in terms of sensitivity of our capacity to measure things, the instrumentation that is used, and also, as I said, the intention and motive of the scientist. A lot of people are looking for specific results, and if they are looking for a specific result and don't get it, they don't see the other results that they did get and go, well, that's very interesting, and let's look into that a little bit more, which really would be kind of more of the scientific mindset. Funding has a lot to do with it too. I think one of the things about the nature of a scientific truth is that its very nature is very reductionistic. Its very nature is isolatory. It looks at these two things and wants to kind of blur everything else out and how it might influence it. And that's not really how reality always works. It can be a little bit too myopic. So I think that leads me to a bigger question, which is, can astrology even be proven by science? Is there any way science could ever possibly even deem it as being true or false, for that matter? I think these are important things to consider when it comes to people that need everything to be proven by science. That is, I think, a very limited, narrow worldview, because the scientific method has not really been around for that long. And if you need something to be proven by science, like, we need to be able to also trust our senses and trust our ability to perceive and our own capacity to decipher truth and reality for ourselves too, and not need this esoteric body of scientific knowledge to be able to tell us, which most people don't understand anyways, right? Like, most lay people could not go onto PubMed and read scientific research and have any remote clue as to what is being talked about. And so this makes for kind of a messy situation, in my opinion, when it comes to science and its relationship to astrology. Now, of course, there are people out there that claim there are scientific validations of astrology, and most of those are really viewed as being kind of more pseudoscience, like not well done science. And I would agree, there is some of that out there. I do think that there is not great research on this topic. Now, that doesn't mean it's not true, right? That does not mean it is not valid. That does not mean that there is not proof.